Yvonne, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Kira. And thank you to the people that are joining us today. I'm Andrew Campbell-Eady. I'm the Head of Communication and Events at the Irish Centre for Diversity. The National Diversity and Inclusion Awards 2026 were held recently to recognise and to celebrate the valuable work being done to address diversity and inclusion in Ireland. This webinar series has been devised to share the insights and experience from the sponsor, the winner, and the finalists so that any learnings can be applied to your organisation or to help with entering the next award cycle. Today's session focuses on the category Advancing LGBTQ+ Inclusion and Equality Award, and that's kindly sponsored by the National Lottery. The National Lottery funds good causes all over Ireland, and since starting in 1987, it has raised almost 7 billion for communities in the areas of health, sports, arts and culture, youth, community, and the Irish language. This is their fourth time as sponsors of the National Diversity and Inclusion Awards, and they have backed this category since the very beginning. Thank you for your support, which helps to make the awards possible. Congratulations are also due to Yvonne and the rest of the team at the National Lottery, because they're proud holders of Investors in Diversity Gold, which is the top tier of Ireland's premier diversity and inclusion accreditation and framework for progress in this vital area. Before we start, it's important to mention that the National Lottery, like the other sponsors and the Irish Centre for Diversity, had no part in the judging process and couldn't enter themselves. I'll shortly hand over to the award sponsor, and then we'll hear from some of the finalists and end with the award winner, wrapping up in about an hour. Automatic closed captions are available on the Teams controls, and I believe Kira behind the scenes will be doing her magic to put a message in the chat to tell you how to access those if you need them. The session's being recorded and will be available on the Irish Centre for Diversity website shortly, and the URL for that is irishcentrefordiversity.ie or simply icfd.ie. Everyone is muted except the panel, but please do share any comments in the chat function. We'd love to hear which organisations you're joining us from. There isn't time for Q&As, but you might get answers to any questions you may have by contacting any of the panelists directly through LinkedIn or other social channels. Right, to the meat of the day. I'm very pleased to introduce our host for today's session, Yvonne Donegan, Head of Human Resources at the National Lottery. Yvonne will give an insight into the National Lottery's diversity inclusion advances and lead what is sure to be an enlightening and uplifting conversation. Over to you, Yvonne.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'd like to just quickly thank Andrew, Kira, and the rest of the team at the Irish Centre for Diversity for organising the webinar this morning. I'm very excited to chat to you all about the work that you're doing in this space. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Yvonne Donegan. I'm the Head of Human Resources at the National Lottery. And at the National Lottery, we're always proud to support initiatives that strengthen inclusion and belonging in Irish society. And that's why we're sponsoring this category for the fourth time, because it matters to us. LGBTQ+ inclusion isn't just about our policies or Pride Month activity, it's about our culture. It's about whether people feel safe and whether they can be fully themselves in their workplaces. All of the organisations that we're hearing from today are not just visible, they've embedded inclusion into leadership, language, and their daily practices. And that's what creates sustainable change. And we are, as always, honoured to play a part in recognising the work that's been done in this space. I'll be really honest, like many organisations over the years, we've had periods of time where our focus on D&I hasn't been as consistent as it should have been. But as part of the new FDJ group, we are aligning our approach with a broader international inclusion framework while still working to strengthen our own local delivery. The combination of group direction and local ownership is important to us, but for this sponsorship, it isn't about us saying that we've arrived, it's about signalling that this matters to us and we're committed to doing the work properly. Just to note, as Andrew mentioned, as a sponsor, we have no involvement in the judging process. I'm really excited to learn more about what you've all been doing. We have one of our finalists that can't attend today, so the National Treasury Management Agency. Unfortunately, our presenter wasn't able to attend this morning. But just to congratulate them on being a finalist, and also just to go through some of the judges' comments. The judges praised their ERG for combining visibility, education, allyship, and strong leadership, from pride marches through to thoughtful learning spaces. So well done again to the NTMA on being a finalist, and hopefully we'll hear from you at another time. So without further delay, I'm delighted to welcome our first finalist on the call today. Representing the Central Bank of Ireland, we have Ciarán O'Sullivan and John Mooney. From Pride celebrations to practical toolkits and ally programs, the judges commented that your approach blends visibility with substance. So Ciarán and John, can I ask you both, what has helped colleagues in the Central Bank feel most comfortable bringing their authentic selves to work?
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Ciarán here. I'm the chair of our Rainbow Network in the Central Bank. So yeah, in thinking about your question, I think the answer is across several different aspects really. So I just picked a few kind of topics that I'll speak on briefly about LGBT inclusion within the Central Bank, aspects that I think that we think are kind of important to highlight to be successful. First up, we have a diversity and inclusion function and dedicated resource team, senior management and resourced by 4 staff who have developed the Central Bank's diversity and inclusion strategy. And the Central Bank strategy is similar. It's kind of develop a workplace that is grounded in fairness and respect and belonging, provide a fulfilling workplace for people where people feel comfortable to be themselves and are supported to reach their potential. They're responsible for arranging D&I awareness training, running allyship and training and resource programs, psychological safety sessions. These are examples of some of the things that our D&I function has organized, as well as providing support, obviously, to the various different ERGs. Our Rainbow Network is one of them. We also have a parents and carers, a women's network, and a disability inclusion network, and a cultural network. So yeah, so I think that's the first thing, a dedicated D&I function, which provides supports to us as the Rainbow Network. Second thing that I would say is, and probably this is, before I speak about our network itself, I think maybe the most important one is the kind of strong senior leadership support that all the ERGs and all the D&I function receives. I think it's consistent in the governor's public messaging, and certainly within the organization at almost every turn. And even now, when things maybe are becoming a little bit more tricky from a D&I perspective, there's still very, very strong commitment to D&I and to our network as well. And personally, I kind of think that, for an ERG, for example, if you don't have that from the very top of the organization, it's kind of meaningless. It's absolutely fundamental. And when it is there, and when it's there effectively, it's really, really good, and it's really, really helpful. Third point that I'd raise then is about our own Rainbow Network. So we have a very active Rainbow Network in the Central Bank, started back in 2017. It's primarily staff-led, supported by, as I said, our D&I function and an executive sponsor, who would be providing support and a voice towards the senior leadership team for us. About 220 members. Again, our focus is on that being your true self and bringing your true self to work. I think we add a lot of visibility. I think you mentioned it in your question. From obviously a full Pride program, wearing our rainbow lanyards, organizing various different events. We have a full series of events during Pride, and we have a connection then with LGBT community kind of groups such as Outhouse, Tenny. We've had charity partnerships with those in the past, and I think that shows not just kind of during Pride, but all year round. We examples of some of the things that we would have ran would be kind of Q&A sessions for LGBT people. We ran an allyship program, so things like that. We've also fed into, the toolkits that are provided here for support so we have a gender identity and expression toolkit that's available to all staff here in CBI. So we would have played a kind of an important role in that being developed. And finally, then what I'd say is important to us as a network, and which I think helps, is it's important that I think you mentioned the substance part of it. We would be very keen to ensure that it's not just rainbow cupcakes during Pride and all that sort of thing. That so our engagement and our charity partnerships with the likes of Outhouse and Tenny and other organisations belong to it in previous years as well. And we volunteer usually a couple of times a year with those organizations as well. We've provided actual resources with Outhouse, for example, when they're developing policy. We provided resources from our staff here in the central bank. So to ensure that there's that substance behind the visibility and the Pride campaigns and the various different events that we organize here. So I think that's kind of finally, I suppose other levels of engagement would be, we're members of networks here. So we're a member of the Proud to Work in Ireland network. We have a couple of our committee members are active committee members there. So that's the Public Services Network of Rainbow Networks. We're active participant in the Fusion Network, which is the Financial Services Rainbow Network of Rainbow Networks. And finally, then we're also a member of the European Central Bank European Network of Networks as well. So we engage outwardly with those as well, and that gives our members opportunities to attend things and participate in things as well. So that's a kind of an overall summary of what we get up to.
Thanks a million, Kieran. That was brilliant. You're doing so many things, so many different things as well. I loved, in particular, you spoke about the senior level of support that the ERGs needed to succeed, but you used the word commitment from them. And it has to be that, right? It's not just, I'm going to put my name to this, I'll be the senior sponsor. They have to have that commitment to progressing and seeing that progression. And it's clear that you have that in spades, I would think. But yeah, sounds brilliant. The getting involved with policies with Outhouse and, really making sure that you're at the point where you can actually facilitate changes and make changes and support people. So yeah, amazing. Well done.
Thank you.
So I'll move on to our next finalist. Next, we're joined by Billy Cross, representing EirGrid. Billy, one aspect of your nomination that was especially impressive is that your Pride network has grown organically from internal care to confident public visibility. One aspect that stood out to the judges was the sense of fun and belonging. Now, before I ask the next question, I have to admit I tend to lean into using fun as a way to embed most things that I do in work. My idea of fun doesn't always carry across, so my team have to sometimes translate it for me. But I do think that connection and bringing some joy into these things can lower barriers in a very powerful way. So in saying that, I'm really interested, Billy, in how that sense of fun and connection has strengthened inclusion across your organisation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi guys, nice to meet you, and thank you for letting me be a part of the webinar today. So I'm here as part of EirGrid's Pride Network. So we're a group of colleagues and friends and families, members of the LGBTQ+ community, promoting the inclusion of the individuals in the workplace. So the purpose of our network is to obviously advance inclusion and create a workplace where the community is celebrated and empowered to be their authentic selves, without fear of judgment or discrimination. We promote allyship across EirGrid. We raise awareness and understanding of the issues and celebrate the culture. And of course, as you said, Yvonne, most of all, we have fun. Our network started out as quite a small group of employees. We organised a presence to take part in the parade. And for the first time in 2024, we were under the Department of Energy and Climate Change as we were marching. the initial focus was obviously to make sure that we were catering to the needs of the community to before kind of participating in external events before going on through the AirGrid brand. But as the network grew and the numbers grew, we decided to march in the 2025 and the Wicklow Parade. Rather than part of the wider department, we marched under AirGrid. So it not only showed kind of growth in the network, but AirGrid have obviously invested in the network, and it really kind of showed the importance of it. Kind of through other, I guess, aspects and events that we'd organised, not just Pride Month, obviously, but we'd organised a fireside chat with one of the members of the Belong To organisation. It was part of the 10-year marriage equality and the importance, within Ireland, along discussing allyship and supporting the parents and family of the community. The feedback for this event was really, really, really positive. We felt that everybody kind of came away with really valuable information and support there. In terms of outside of that, though, hosting fun events obviously is a massive part of what we do. It's how we get people together. It's an opportunity for people from all across the business to meet in a kind of less formal and more fun environment. So we have things, I think the first thing that we did was indoor roller skating at the ice rink, which is really, really cool. So we've also taken part in the Pride Run, and we've just really found that the network members have formed a really strong bond throughout all the activities, as well as creating a really safe space for members within AirGrid to be themselves as well. So yeah, it's been, I guess, fundamental in having fun whilst also trying to, do something really, really important as well. So, yeah.
That's brilliant, Billy. I'm here frantically writing down the things that you've been doing for fun. I'm going to suggest them now to my team.
Do the roller disco. It was brilliant.
Disco.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
That sounds amazing. But I love the idea of using those kind of fun events to form a bond between the group and for them to feel that they have their community at work and they are safe and they have that whole perspective. I think is amazing. I love that you marched as AirGrid, and obviously as part of a bigger group, we're very focused on local initiatives that as the National Lottery as well. So I think it's great that you marched as AirGrid and gave that back to the team as well. So well done. Amazing work. Just moving on to our next finalist, we have Mason Hayes Curran and we have Jenny Kellahan from Mason Hayes Curran. So Jenny, welcome to the call today. Through policy, visibility and storytelling, you've created a space for people to truly be themselves, and the judges praised this aspect of your nomination. What role do shared lived experiences and ongoing conversations play in sustaining this culture year after year? And how important is visible leadership in maintaining that momentum?
Yeah, thanks so much, Yvonne. And thanks to the National Centre for Diversity for bringing us all together and for recognising our work in this space, and for organising such a fab, joyous awards ceremony earlier in the month. It's been really inspiring to be around so many dedicated and brilliant people. So just to introduce myself, my name is Jenny Kellahan. I'm a solicitor on the Planning and Environment team at Mason Hayes Curran. I'm a member of the firm's diversity committee, and I also represent MHC on the executive committee of the Outlaw Network. And just for anyone who might not be familiar, Outlaw is an active and vibrant network of people across the legal community committed to fostering and driving the inclusion of LGBTQ plus people in the legal profession. So to answer your question, Yvonne, in terms of the role that shared conversations and lived experiences have in allowing people to truly be themselves, I think I'd like to speak to the impact of personal stories in creating that space. I think in Ireland in particular, we're a country of storytellers. We have a really rich history in storytelling. And in my experience, personal stories can often be the most impactful way to get a point across and also to inform people in an accessible and meaningful and ultimately relatable way. And I think, stories are even more important in today's extremely polarized society. There's so much fear mongering and division and culture wars and all of that kind of stuff. So I think hearing personal stories can really cut through that noise and humanize minority groups for people. And I think as well, something I've kind of come across, particularly in respect of the LGBTQ plus community, is people can often be scared of like saying the wrong thing, and it can hold people back. So I think by bringing real people in and platforming their stories, it takes the fear out of it and allows you to kind of meet people where they are. So just to give some examples of how we've tried to bring these stories to our colleagues, MHC regularly hosts Diversity Matters sessions where we invite influential speakers in from a range of different backgrounds to share their lived experiences and their stories. So previous speakers over the years have included TDs, HIV awareness campaigners, and LGBTQ plus advocates. In terms of recent events, I had the absolute privilege of moderating MHC's panel to mark the 10-year anniversary of the marriage equality referendum. We just thought this was a really important milestone to mark, and also, to your point, Billy, to celebrate and to bring the joy into it. So we had two wonderful speakers. We had Seamus Carney-Martoni from Irish Gay Dads and Brian Sheehan, who's the former co-director of the Yes Equality campaign. And they just came in and shared their stories, and they spoke with such passion and expertise and heart. And we celebrated and reflected on the significance of the referendum. And it was just so meaningful to hear the speakers' experiences and memories of that time as well. And it was a really timely reminder of the power of community and collective action. We also importantly discussed what remains to be done in terms of achieving full equality and safety and dignity for LGBTQ plus people and their families. For example, Seamus really graciously spoke about his own family story and the ongoing fight for equality in terms of children and family rights in Ireland. And then more recently, we partnered with Outlaw to host Aisling Gannon SC, who's the vice chair of Belong to mark National Coming Out Day in October. So we came together to celebrate that day and mainly to learn how to better support queer children, young people and loved ones, both in our personal lives and through our workplaces. And we're really thankful to Belong to for their support with that event, particularly for the hard copy resources that they provided for guests to take home, coming out guides and that kind of thing. And we're so grateful to Aisling Gannon. She really spoke so beautifully and powerfully and really openly about her family's journey and what it means to her to be an ally. And it was actually really emotional. There was a few tears in the room at certain points. And it was also very empowering and impactful. And the feedback from our guests for both of those events was that they left informed and inspired, and I think just better equipped to kind of support people in their lives. And then just to wrap up, Yvonne, to your question about the importance of these initiatives being leadership-led, I think it just goes back generally to the role that leaders of an organisation play in creating and cultivating culture. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, right now, for LGBTQ plus inclusion and equality in the current political climate, leadership matters more than ever. And particularly in the face of this global D&I pushback and pullback, I think having that unwavering and visible and tangible support from management is even more meaningful. And to be part of an organisation that publicly holds firm on its values, regardless of the circumstances, is incredibly impactful in terms of maintaining that inclusive culture. And yeah, it just makes me very proud to work at MHC.
Amazing, Jenny. Just so many things. I don't even know where to start. I think you mentioned at the start people's fear around saying the wrong thing, and bringing in speakers to talk openly and to remove that fear. It's so important because I do think that a lot of times people might feel like they're not engaging or they're not supporting. when sometimes it is driven by fear, and, you know, trying to meet people where they're at with that and bring them along on the journey is so important. And I think you've done that so well, and you've explained that so well. The speakers you've had sound amazing.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely brilliant.
It's all them. We're just facilitating them.
Just sounds
absolutely
amazing.
phenomenal.
A speaker in that space, you know, when they're talking about their personal journey and they can really, you know, put themselves into the story in that way is just so impactful. So amazing work. Well done to all of you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne.
Thanks for sharing, Jenny. Our penultimate finalist today in this category is CISC, and we have Johnny Cox with us today. Johnny, the judges congratulated you for developing the strategy in a traditionally male-dominated industry. The True Colours initiative has brought LGBTQ plus inclusion into sites as well as into your offices. Can I ask you what impact you've seen when inclusion is talked about in a very practical way every day, in everyday language on the ground?
Yeah, thanks Yvonne, and thanks to the National Lottery for sponsoring the awards. It's humbling to be in the company of so many great organisations who are doing so much for diversity across Ireland. So to introduce myself first, my name is Johnny Cox. As you said, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a proud gay man, married to my husband Robert for nearly 10 years, and we've got the cutest dog in the world, Teddy, who might interrupt me in the middle of this. I've worked for CISC for almost 18 months, and I hold the position of the Vice Chair of the True Colours Network. To give a bit background on CISC, CISC is a fifth generation family-owned construction and engineering business that's been around for over 160 years, and it delivers across Ireland, the UK and Europe. We build many landmark projects from Liberty Hall to Croke Park and Aviva and Convention Centre, as well as many, many more. CISC are number one in terms of the construction companies within Ireland, but we want to be seen as thought leaders, not just in construction, but also in the DEIB space. Like many in the sector, we're very honest about the starting point. Construction is still very male-dominated, macho culture, and breaking norms in that kind of a space is particularly challenging. We launched the True Colours Network, or Employee Resource Group, in 2023, and it's one of the 4 ERGs now we have in CISC. True Colours and all of our ERGs, like many of the people here, have their own executive sponsor, and we benefit from both the financial backing but the visible support across the leadership team in the whole organisation. We participated in Dublin Pride Parade for the last 2 years, and we'll be back again in June, bigger and better than ever, with more excitement, hopefully. But to go back to your question around language, for us, the biggest shift happens when we talk about inclusion the same way we talk about safety. We use short, clear, plain English guidance that's tied to real site situations, and we often use simpler terms that are easy for everyone to relate to, such as fairness and respect. One example that we're very proud of is it's only banter workshop, allyship workshop. And so rather than theory, we walk through kind of everyday moments, the offhand joke in the canteen, the nickname that lands badly, or the WhatsApp message that crosses the line. And we practice kind of 2-sentence interventions that de-escalate and reset the tone. There's no lectures, no grandstanding, just respectful language that people can use even at 7 a.m. on a cold, muddy building site. And when our employees leave the sessions with knowing what to say and what to do the next time, you see the behavior change even from the next day. Within the True Colours, each Pride, we also run toolbox talks across all the sites and the offices, and that covers kind of the terminology, things around pronouns and LGBTQ plus allyship. In very straightforward terms. We're quite a diverse organisation in terms of cultures and languages. So using simple language is key. And the goal is not to make anybody an expert. It's to just remove anxiety about saying the wrong thing, and it gives people the confidence to engage respectfully. And we do them where people work. So like you mentioned, on sites and in the style that they're used to. And we get much better participation and better questions when we do it. And then, like, not everything needs a workshop. Some of the other speakers today talked about very simple, visible signals. So like we distributed hundreds of the Pride lanyards last year. And we also, during June, added the CISC Pride logo, which is behind me here, to all of our email signatures for like 2,500 employees. And so those cues kind of make allyship normal and visible, and they cost very little in terms of energy. But the message that they get across for LGBTQ colleagues is you're safe here in this organization. The visibility also supports conversations with our clients and our supply chain partners who also care about inclusion. Some of our supply chain and our competitors were also involved in sponsoring awards this year as well. So it helps us attract a very diverse workforce. And I'm a prime example of this. I spent most of my career in financial services, and I've just moved to construction, and I feel very safe within the organization. So I suppose if I was to boil it down to 4 tips for other organizations who are watching the webinar, it'd be lose the jargon, but keep the action. So like teach phrases and micro behaviors and not just abstract concepts. Use real scenarios from everyday life, because people buy what feels close to what they're experiencing. Make sure that you use the leaders within your organization. So site agents and site leaders have to deliver the content, because that's where you'll see the culture change. And then resource it properly. So make sure that there's a kind of a ring fence budget, that your organization's not having to fight for funds to help with diversity. So I suppose in a very roundabout way, Yvonne, my point is, when inclusion speaks the language of the site, you brief, practical and respectful, it stops being an initiative and it starts being a habit. And that's the true impact that we're seeing here in CISC and with True Colours.
That's amazing. I love the lose the jargon tip.
Yeah.
And probably, I think, one of the most important things, because I think, again, people are confused and, they're anxious that they're going to say the wrong thing. So I think, meeting them where they are, and again, going through your example of going through everyday moments and, using real life examples and 2 sentences to just put people in the right headspace and explain to them in a nice, supportive way how they can do better the next time, or what is appropriate and what isn't, but to see that immediate response where the next day you're seeing a different interaction on your sites, I think is amazing. So that's just brilliant. Well done.
Okay.
Our last finalist today is our winner in this category. So I am delighted to introduce A&L Goodbody, represented today by Jack Gibson. So Jack and A&L Goodbody, congratulations on your win. The judges commented that your work demonstrated how legal expertise can be a powerful form of allyship. So our question to you today is, how does supporting the LGBTQ plus individuals and organizations through pro bono work shape your own understanding of inclusion at work? And how inspiring was the opportunity to get involved in landmark legislation reform?
Thanks, Yvonne. Indeed, thanks to everyone else for sharing their work about advancing inclusion and leading the vanguard in your sectors. It's been just a real pleasure hearing about that, and it's a real privilege to be able to speak alongside you. My name is Jack Gibson. I'm a solicitor and I practice full-time in our pro bono department. And usually when I speak about pro bono work, I always think it's useful to remember that pro bono doesn't just mean that a lawyer is not going to charge you, but it's actually shorthand. It's a Latin phrase, pro bono publico, which any lawyer on the call, Jenny, I won't put you on the spot, but might tell you it means for the public good. So when we say we're doing something pro bono, it's not, just this one's on us. It's that we think that by using our skills to advise you or to represent you is in a sort of greater public interest, or it helps towards some common good. And for us, that common good is social justice and inclusion. And we've a really long, proud history of doing pro bono work, but formerly it was very ad hoc. And it was about 13 years ago when we started doing pro bono in a much more intentional and structured way. So at that time, we became the first law firm in Ireland to establish a human rights casework referral program. And we did that with the Irish Refugee Council. So that would be whereby their expert solicitors would train up our lawyers in refugee law, and they would, enable us to be able to take on clients who've been calling to their clinic or calling their services and advise and represent them in their application for international protection in Ireland. And then since that time, we've created similar programs. So now we do similar work in the areas of housing and homelessness, and we partner with the Mercy Law Resource Centre. And we advise child refugees on their right to family reunification in Ireland. We do that with the Immigrant Council of Ireland. So now through all those different sort of programs, those human rights casework programs, at any time, hundreds of our lawyers from every practice group around the firm, corporate M&A, aviation, technology, whatever you're having yourself, those lawyers are acting for hundreds of individuals and families who are facing injustice, persecution, exclusion. So your question was, how does doing that work sort of shape our understanding of inclusion at work for LGBTQ people? And it's a funny one to answer in a way, because ALG is a very inclusive workplace, and it has been for a really long time. We've had successive D&I strategies. We have our partners who are responsible for implementing those. We have our LGBTQ employee resource group, who are really vibrant and active in organizing events and social and educational events for our people, busy fundraising for our LGBT organization partners, developing policies to roll out around the business, like most recent is our transitioning at work policy. But how pro bono work, I think, does inform our view and understanding of inclusion is that, while we recognize we have this lucky position in our firm of being able to come to work and be our full selves, that remains quite far off for a lot of queer people in many facets of life. So one example is a young man that we acted for last year in his application for refugee status. He arrived in Ireland on a tourist visa to visit family, having left Uganda after his relationship with another boy in his class had been discovered, and he was subjected to really, really terrible violence in school and then at home. And while he was here on holiday, he learned, and he looked into, he went to one of the LGBT organizations and learned that he could apply for refugee status to stay. So he was referred into us eventually as a client, and we acted for him. We advised him on the law. We helped draft personal statements and legal submissions. We prepared him for his interview, and we were with him in his interview for international protection, preparing him in a really sort of trauma-informed way, knowing that this process is going to be extremely hard on him. Sticking with kind of international protection work, last year I acted for a trans woman from Gaza who had left Gaza when the genocide broke out. Before coming to Ireland, she hadn't really fully understood or explored her true gender. And when she was here, she found a community and a group of friends and was able to discover this about herself and start to express herself. And she disclosed her gender identity to me over the course of acting for her. And when I learned that, we decided this had to become part of the basis of her claim for refugee status, because she had a well-founded fear that even if the situation in Gaza was improved drastically, she would still have a fear of persecution just for being her true self there. And then in our housing work, we recently acted for a young woman who was rejected was rejected by her family once she came out, and she was made to leave the family home. She sought emergency accommodation from her local authority, and she was turned away by them. They were saying this is a family dispute, and she had a place to live, and they just needed to resolve it. So we had to, step in and explain to the local authority that it wasn't reasonable to expect her to stay there, and that she had a legal right to exercise here to access this support. So, those are just examples that I think kind of illustrate the point, which is, in Ireland, I think we have made huge strides at making workplaces inclusive, and that's so evident from what everyone's said so far. But through our pro bono work, we can really see that there are corners of the world, but also our own society, where that still isn't the case. And the real privilege of being a lawyer and doing pro bono work is that you can take those principles of inclusivity or equality that we get to enjoy every day in our workplace and try make them a reality for people who are facing injustice in their own lives. The other question that you asked me was about being involved in landmark legislative reform. So yeah, this is the piece of work that the firm is just so proud of to have been involved in. And it is just one of those great examples of the allyship that lawyers can show LGBT organizations and activists, and the particular skill set we have that can help them achieve their mission of equality, or we're called for change. This project that you're referring to was where the firm was instructed by the Cork Gay Project, together with barristers Killian Bracken and Caleb Barley, to draft a bill that provided for a process of disregarding historic criminal convictions arising from consensual sexual activity between queer men. So the bill that our lawyers, together with the barristers, drafted, sought to put in place a non-adversarial, trauma-informed process that would be situated in a framework of human rights and equality and restorative justice. And it would be through this process that men who've been convicted would receive an expungement, but importantly also an apology and an acknowledgement from the state that maintaining an offence against them was discriminatory and it was contrary to their human dignity. So this bill, was just one of many projects led by amazing campaigners who had been involved in trying to right this historic wrong for a long time. And the work of that we did culminated in the bill actually being introduced in the Oireachtas in last July as a private member's bill by Angus O'Snoddig, and it was co-signed by a number of opposition parties. So that was, a great, extraordinary day out. But we were even more delighted to learn earlier this month that the government has committed to introducing a statutory disregard scheme. So we will be following publication of its bill and learning about what it has in store with great interest, and indeed so will our clients. So, a huge success for them to have been able to put that pressure on to kind of get us to this place. I suppose the question was, how does it feel, how inspiring is it to get involved in that work? And it's amazing. Of course it is. I wasn't involved directly in the work, but the lawyers who did the drafting are still here. And, it's just such a privilege to be able to do that. But, as lawyers, we're not always the ones who are out in front leading the charge. That's really not our job. Our job's to act for clients. It's about making sure the law is applied correctly and fairly, and that everyone gets, a chance to participate in justice. And the firm, we'd like to do that for LGBT organizations, and, utilizing our specialized commercial and legal expertise. So while we're not necessarily the change makers or at the forefront, what we can do is ally ourselves to those organizations to take those skills to empower them to work as safely and effectively as possible. So, sometimes that looks like pushing for legislative change and photo calls on the steps of the Dáil, which is great, but more often than not, it's about being a trusted advisor in a sort of quiet space, helping an organization navigate a complex or sensitive issue, or to stress test an idea, or even just helping them develop their understanding on an issue, all with the goal to give them peace of mind to be able to focus on what they do and, making change for the queer community. I won't speak to kind of specific clients that we worked for, but just some examples of the work is research that we conducted with another international law firm last year on the status of the legal recognition of children born to queer families and queer people in Ireland. And that was part of a sort of larger European report on rainbow families. in, it's been mentioned on the call, the kind of increasing hostility that, LGBT organizations and people are facing now. And, we recognize that our clients are really operating in very challenging times. So to assist that, we make available partners from our litigation department, who would regularly enough, unfortunately, have to provide urgent sort of reputational or crisis management advices when those organizations have attacks on their good name. And then, we do a huge amount of work advising LGBT organizations on navigating what's, a very complex and highly regulated landscape for organizations. And, this is not the glamorous work of human rights battles in court or campaigns for reform, but it's absolutely essential legal work that ensures that those organizations, meet their legal obligations in terms of corporate governance and compliance, and meaning that they can operate safely, with their risk mitigated as much as possible, and then to really ensure their success in the long term. So I kind of raised those because I think it is really easy to celebrate the big days out, and that, the legislation being published was a big day out. But really, it's those other quiet days where lawyers can demonstrate their allyship and their solidarity. That means that, these amazing LGBT organizations who've given us as a society so much to be grateful for, means that they can kind of get on with their work and keep doing what they do.
That's brilliant, Jack. The support that ALG has given to the LGBTQ plus community and the organizations is amazing, whether in Ireland or, people coming from other parts of the world. And certainly, we've spoken a lot about advances in Ireland, but we still have work to do. But when we look at people coming from different parts of the world and how far behind maybe those places are, and the risk of real harm to those people, and the work that you do to offer or support them to be safe is just unbelievable. So very well done on the award and on winning. Very well deserved. So that's the end of all our presentations today. Just before I hand back to Andrew, I'd like to thank all of our finalists and to ANL Goodbody on your win. What stood out for me today is that inclusion is not just a single initiative, and it never will be. It takes everyone. It absolutely takes a village, and for us to build those communities and those villages within our workplaces. It's about our leadership and being consistent. And my new favorite phrase, it's about removing the jargon. So we will be doing that. On behalf of the National Lottery, I'd like to thank you all for the work you're doing in your organisations and right across the country, and outside of the country. Andrew, I know you're probably sitting there on questions for some of the panelists. No, not this time.
Yeah.
You are.
Always lots of questions. My God. Yvonne, that was amazing. I just echo everything you said. That was incredible. I was thinking, okay, so this is going to be about pride and focused on pride, but it's amazing to see the huge scale of work that's being done, and not just in pride, and that whole commitment from inclusive leadership and leadership that kind of really walks the talk, and it's not performative. So they make sure that the ERGs are resourced. They make sure that, well, not just the inclusive leadership, but that the whole teams make sure that there's a calendar of events throughout the year, because it's not all just about June. Amazing, but I do have questions. So here we go. But before I get to them, I just wanted to say, I was taking huge amounts of notes, and I want to kind of do my own soapbox piece now, saying, as a gay man, I would be confident going into any of the finalists that are up here today. Like, the work you're doing in terms of inclusion and equality for LGBTQ is incredible. My God. And so well thought out and so well executed. So congratulations to you all for being finalists. Congratulations to Jack, obviously, is the winner, but you're all doing amazing work. And you don't need me to tell you, but the ripples of what you do within your organization spread outwards. Johnny, the work that you're doing in CISC with the soapbox talks and the banter and things like that, all of the people on site, they have brothers, sisters, the ripples are incredible. So you're all doing amazing stuff. Congratulations. It's great to see that the work being done isn't, the commitment is still there despite the kind of negative winds that are trying to blow us off course. But it's great to see that commitment, alive and kicking. The work being done shows that I can't even read my notes now. The work being done shows that it isn't. Oh, it's all year. It's all year round. It's incredible. The work being done shows it's needed all year round. The work being done shows that it doesn't have to be big in terms of resources, in terms of people's time, in terms of budget. So something as simple as Johnny's rainbow logo during Pride Month and other times during the year is something that organizations of any size can do. So it's incredible. And again, the ripples of that and the message that sends out is just fantastic. Onto my questions now. So Jack and Jenny, specifically, sorry to put you on the spot. Now, the work that you do is incredible. And I know that you're dealing in the law, but have you faced, what kind of pushback do you face in terms of the advances that you're trying to make? And maybe working in the legal framework means that you're very much going by the letter of the law and there's no deviation from that, and people are either complying or they're not. But there must be a kind of a visceral, not must be, but I imagine there could be some visceral just pushback against, say, trying to support someone's asylum bids, and in terms of from clients maybe saying, well, why are you doing all this? Why is this necessary? Just want, and I put those to either of you. So
Yeah, no, I'm happy to take that. I suppose the difficulty that we see coming up in our work when we are acting for queer people is that sometimes there's this misconception that that's all looked after. We have all the laws to look after that. Discrimination, homophobia, transphobia is kind of over. We're this super accepting, pluralist society. We had marriage equality. We have the Gender Recognition Act. All's rosy in the garden, but it's not. And I spoke about that example of that young woman that we acted for because, I don't think people really think that still happens, but it does. It's a reality that people do face that exclusion and that every day. And having, organizations there, be them ourselves or be them, to advise them on the law, or those amazing LGBT organizations to show support and solidarity for those people and to assist them when they face these difficulties is just as essential as ever. And I think that kind of idea that, we've looked after the work for equality is a really dangerous one, and we have to really guard against it because we are so lucky in Ireland to be in the position we're in, but the work, goes on.
Absolutely. Jenny, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question, Andrew. And I suppose we'd be coming at it from a slightly different perspective. It's more in terms of the difficulties our clients might be facing, particularly in the face of potential penalties or difficulties or funding cuts across the pond. So I guess it's more just about, for us, trying to stand firm and consistent, regardless of maybe the questions we might get or the hurdles there. It's really just like a values-based commitment from our perspective.
Right, all very valid. My next question is to Billy, actually. Sorry to put dun 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 dun. It just feels like I feel like a quiz master now. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I wanted to know if with AirGrid, you kind of face similar things to Johnny and Cisc, where I imagine it's a male-dominated industry. People working on site, people working outside, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Have you faced, and I don't know why I'm focusing so much on pushback, but
Yeah.
I wondered, do you face any? Have you faced any pushback or people thinking, "Oh, why are we doing this?" I suppose it comes down in terms.
Yeah, do you know, it was actually so funny when I was actually making a few notes myself as we were going through this, that the idea of, like a toolbox talk as well. It's funny with AirGrid, we are predominantly kind of office based and what we would call corporate, even though we are very kind of engineer heavy, which is maybe more of a male dominated field. I actually work in I should have mentioned earlier, I work in the early talent space. So I look after like the grads, the interns, and we're very proud to actually have a 50-50 gender balance, which is incredible. Outside of that though, I wouldn't necessarily say we have pushback. I'll be honest, AirGrid is maybe in the slightly more kind of early stages of developing our Pride network. I don't want to sound kind of naive to say I haven't heard of it. It's not to say that it's not there, but I think if it is something that, that we maybe want to progress to in the future, like these toolbox kind of talks as well, it's definitely something I'm probably going to take to my next monthly meeting as well, because I just think it's so important, and it's particularly as we get bigger and as we kind of branch out more and as the network gets bigger, we can't just stop and stay where we are. There's so much more that we could be doing. So it's hard to kind of say if we've had pushback as such. It's not to say that it's not there, but I'll definitely be taking the the toolbox kind of things to the next meeting. So yeah, hopefully that kind of answers the question there.
It does, yeah. It sounds like with inclusion in your values anyway, I'm sure that kind of negates the question anyway. I'm gonna move on to Kieran now, and hopefully shift the conversation a bit more back to the positive. So Kieran, you've talked about how the central bank is part of various networks, kind of professional networks, and the ERG that you operate on a European level, on a sector level. What benefits do you think that being locked into those different networks, what does that bring?
I think primarily different perspectives, and I mean, if you even consider across the three networks themselves, so one is a public service network, which I think would probably be a little bit of a more stable environment in terms of psychological safety, to have a network and be able, that we were in a safe space to kind of grow that, and people can still, be comfortable to be themselves within. The financial services network, then, I'm not going to lie, we've started to hear a few different stories from maybe American multinationals, for example, about less access to funding or people feeling less secure to attend network events. So, we're getting that perspective. And then you can imagine as well, across the various European countries with different governments, and some right-wing governments, and this, we're hearing those perspectives as well. So I think it brings connection, but it also gets you hear different perspectives. And I feel as well that for being from Ireland, in the European one, for example, I feel like we occupy a bit of a leadership role. We're one of the most established and longest established networks, because Ireland is quite a progressive country, I suppose, and remains that way. So I feel an onus on us to kind of be a leading light there as well. Yeah, so I think perspectives, and then maybe an opportunity for us to lead as well.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's useful, because the reason I asked the question is because I wanted to hear more about kind of that solidarity and as you say, different perspectives, because as somebody said earlier, that the war wasn't won with marriage equality. We still need to fight different fronts, and seeing what's happening in different European jurisdictions and in the US just shows how fragile these wins are. So we've got to keep pushing.
If I could just mention something, actually, because I attended something on Friday morning. So Outhouse have launched a new piece of research called Pride and Poverty, and it's a survey that they conducted. And it's essentially shining a light on this sense that that the perception might be there that LGBT people are quite well off and kind of sorted from a progress point of view. And, you know, this research kind of highlights that this just simply isn't the case, that a lot of LGBT people in Ireland are in, you know, suffer from poverty, and disproportionately so as well. And that within society, the LGBT kind of aspect of that is not really highlighted in policy. So it's just an interesting perspective as well.
And where can people access that report if they want to, Kieran? Do you know?
Yes, it's on Outhouse. Dave, that's why I'm bringing it up, because Oisin kind of asked us to kind of distribute it.
Sure.
It's on Outhouse's website. There's a link to it, outhouse.ie. I think it's, you know, / Pride and Poverty. But I think it's interesting reading for us all. To kind of, I think hopefully we'll hear a little bit more about it. And if you guys want to distribute within your networks as well, I'm sure they'd be very grateful.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, listen, we are up to time. So that means, Johnny, you get away without a question, but never mind. So I'm just going to wrap up now and just say thank you again for all the tremendous work being done out there. I don't know how the judges found a way through all of that, but yeah, amazing. Thank you to Yvonne and the National Lottery. Thank you to our finalists. Thank you to Jacket NL Gabodi, our winner, for sharing all of your amazing work. Thanks to Kira behind the scenes for your amazing work, keeping everything running smoothly. Thank you to the audience for joining us. The recording will be available shortly in a few days once Kira has done her magic to make it all look wonderful. Feel free to contact us through the website, irishcenterfordiversity.ie, if you have any questions, and to register for any other of the webinars in the National Diversity Inclusion Awards webinar series, and to view other recordings. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Bye-bye.